I'd like to introduce you all to Chuck DeVore.
Great to see all of you here today. Excellent. Well, I'm very delighted to be here and to be one of the first officially endorsed candidates from the Independence Caucus. It means a lot to me. For those of you who aren't quite sure with how this group came to be, there was an establishment Republican congressman in Utah that had voted for quite a few bills that expanded government beyond what it should have been. And a group of individuals took a look at this individual and determined that he was raising a lot of money from some big interest groups. Perhaps he wasn't representing his constituents like he used to. And so they ran the individual against him. This individual they ran against him was outspent dramatically. But what this individual had that the establishment Republican didn't have was thousands of volunteers. And it ended up that in the Republican primary, Jason Chaffetz beat the establishment Republican and went on to become a U.S. Congressman. And so was born Independence Caucus out of a movement to try to take back politics from the moneyed special interests. And we're beginning to see that now, of course, across the country. I think that in many respects, the Independence Caucus kind of presaged what is popularly known as the Tea Party movement or the 9/12 Project or other similar groups, in that they kind of did it first in 2008 and have since kind of been building upon their lessons learned, building on their success. And so what I'm here to tell you is that they have a very comprehensive vetting process where they're trying to find out how precisely the people that they're thinking about endorsing line up with our foundational principles as a nation. Do the candidates they're endorsing actually believe in the Constitution as written? Or do they think it's some flexible living document that you can impute whatever meaning into it you want as time goes on? And so I think that the Independence Caucus is one of those needed groups at this moment in time in America when we seem to be straying so far from our foundational principles with things like the bailout of Wall Street or this massive $800 billion stimulus plan that we had last year, or Obamacare, or any one of the number of things that we all, unfortunately, can just tick off and name one after another as to what's going on. Now, 2010 is going to, I think, be a very unique year in American history, because what we're beginning to see, and you saw kind of a hint of it in Virginia and in New Jersey, and then, of course, conclusive proof in Massachusetts, where in a state that is far more liberal than is California, where they don't have one member of their delegation in the House of Representatives as a Republican. Scott Brown was outnumbered 7-1 in the state Senate by Democrats. He was one of only 5 Republicans in the state Senate. Here in the California legislature, where I served as a state assemblyman, I'm only outnumbered almost 2-1. As compared to Massachusetts, where Scott Brown was outnumbered 7-1. And yet, coming from 30 points down in December, he won by 5 percentage points last month. Now, here in California, we're seeing a series of opinion polls that would indicate that our 28-year veteran of Capitol Hill, Barbara Boxer, is in a bit of trouble. Last summer, Barbara Boxer had a 9 or 10 point lead over either me or Carly Fiorina, my main Republican opponent, who was backed by the establishment, for lack of a better term. So last summer I was down 10, Carly Fiorina was down 9, then I was down 9 and she was down 10, and I was down 10 and she was down 9. That's not very encouraging for someone like Barbara Boxer, who you would think would have a substantial 20 or 30% lead here in liberal California. Well, then last month, with the advent of Tom Campbell jumping from the gubernatorial race into the Senate race, there was a 3-way poll taken by Rasmussen. Carly Fiorina was down 3, Campbell was down 4, I was down 6. we were all within the margin of error of Barbara Boxer in the poll, meaning that statistically, any one of us could have theoretically beaten Barbara Boxer if the election were held that day. Then last week, Rasmussen updated the poll. Carly Fiorina was down 4, Tom Campbell was down 4, I was down 5. Again, all of us within the margin of error of the poll, with Barbara Boxer being held in the mid-40%. Now, political scientists will tell you that an incumbent scoring in the mid-40s 9 months before an election is a sure danger sign. But we know that this will not be an easy task. California is the biggest state in the union. We have the most expensive media markets. We have very powerful public sector employee unions in this state. And the deck is stacked against us. But we have principles on our side. We have, I think, a growing realization among the American public that we cannot continue this debt-fueled expansion of our federal government. We have a growing realization from the American public that things like this $800 billion stimulus plan are going to have tremendously negative implications, not only for current economic growth, but for the economic liberty and prosperity of our children and grandchildren. You see, each one of us, each average American, has now incurred a monthly obligation of $280 in principal and interest to repay that $800 billion of debt from the stimulus. And that $280 obligation goes on forever. That's just to maintain the principal and interest over an indefinite period of time. Think of the implications for investment in job creation and productivity improvements now that we have to set aside $280 for every American to pay the tab on the stimulus plan. And ladies and gentlemen, that is just one of our president's initiatives. And we hear he wants to do a follow-up. And how much will cap and trade cost if that gets off the ground? How much will Obamacare pass if that gets off the ground? What we are looking at is a fundamental alteration of the nature of these United States, and it is not for the better.